So the take-home message is doing parallel development. That's the theme. Avoid the linear and do the parallel development. And encourage the governments, health planners and health agencies like the World Health Organization to think more creatively about their approach. And I think there is a problem that those international health agencies really don't want to give this the attention it deserves. We have to be the stone in their shoe. And it's because we have a right and they have a duty. And it may be challenging, but it's not too hard to do. I want to say thank you to my family for supporting me in the rare disease advocacy that I do. And I think because we're in Mexico and I realise that so many things and the things that people have been talking about over the last few days has an emotional content to it, which we don't normally see in my country anyway, or many others. I wanted to pay particular thanks to my mother, because she instilled in me the value of caring for those who are disadvantaged. And I think it has had an enormous influence, I know it's had an enormous influence on the things that I have done in my life. And I also want to thank all of you whose work and interests in rare diseases have brought you here today and will take you back out into the world to continue to pursue these important issues for those who depend on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Some very important and personal words there that all of us, I think, can share in and take away. Okay, let's move on to the second speaker, Ségolène MA, who has a CV that I could read out and fill the whole of the rest of the conference, I think. It's remarkable achievements. Actually, you have to be careful. That people who have long CVs like that are usually old, so I'm not equating the two. But she's been Director of Research at INSERM in France, member of the European Commission Expert Group on Rare Diseases, similar involvement and responsibilities at WHO level, Editor-in-Chief of the Orphanet Journal, which is something that I certainly make a lot of use on, and one of yet many more activities she's involved in is the IRDiRC, and that's what she's going to give us an update about this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for this introduction. It's horribly difficult to speak after John Forman, because he was so good, so inspirational. I'm going to take you through what we try to do at international level, which is a very difficult level, as you know, to improve the situation of research for rare diseases, because at the end what patients want is to have an appropriate treatment and appropriate care in general. So where is so what are the achievements of this international consortium of research funding agencies, but which members are also patient organizations, industry representatives? So this organization was launched in 2011 with two ambitious goals at that time. We thought that we should try to influence research and development so as to have 200 new therapies in 2020. And we were very optimistic in thinking that we could have a diagnostic test for most rare diseases, because when in 2011, that was the time where sequencing activities were really on the forefront, and we thought that we could discover very quickly all the genes involved and be able to provide a diagnostic test. Now we are a bit less optimistic because we see that biology is a bit more complicated than what we thought, but let's say we will try to achieve that. So these were the goals. So if we look at the reality, that's a graph showing you where we stand with the number of genes linked to rare diseases, which have been identified year after year since the beginning of IRDiRC in 2010. And you see that it's increasing, of course, and that's a very good sign, but not at the speed we thought at the beginning, for many reasons that I am not going to develop here. But in terms of therapies, we have a very good surprise, because in fact, research and development goes faster than what we thought. And we are in 2015, and we have already 144 new drugs on the market since the launch of IRDiRC. And so we will certainly reach the 200 before 2020, which means that I mean, it's a field which is really blooming, but that's, of course, not enough to solve the problem of most patients. So in a sense, it's a very good news. In another sense, you see that it's a very slow process to develop therapies, and that it will require more effort in the future. So what we have done is to try to convince more and more research funding agencies to join, to ensure that most countries contribute to the funding of good research. And you see the map of countries where there is at least one funding agency active in this consortium. And you see that North America is very well represented with the USA and Canada. Most of European countries are also with us. Australia, China, and Japan now, so, and Korea. So we have many Asian countries as well. So it's truly an international organization, but some countries, you see that there is a white area in Latin America, I don't know why. So there is room for more members joining. What we have done, like ICORD, we have, of course, discussed and adopted principles that we think are operational to improve the situation in for research and development. And it's about sharing and collaborative work. It's obvious that for rare diseases you cannot avoid collaborating with colleagues from other countries, even from other continents, to have enough data to work on, also to share your skills and your abilities and your technology. So recognizing that means that the funding agencies, for instance, have to be inventive in finding ways to fund research which is done in several different countries, and that's unusual because usually they fund research at national level. So this is useful, but for rare diseases it's not enough. We also identify the problem of scientific standards. If we want to speak, to work together, we have to speak the same language in science. We have to code data the same way. We have to, let's say, have a nomenclature for genes and for variants. We have to understand each other. So working on standards for us was a priority. And also, we, like ICORD, we said that no good research can be done without the patients and the patient perspective. And that's a challenge for the patient organizations and the patients because it's time consuming for them. They are not always supported enough as to, let's say, completely participate to all the activities where we would like them to participate in, but that's really a goal. We have adopted recently an action plan to promote what we had identified as necessities on standards for interoperability and data sharing. We have identified among all the nomenclatures which are used in the medical field to describe patients when patients are coded for their signs and symptoms and coded for their diagnosis. We have identified all the terminologies and we have discussed with all of them to, let's say, identify if we could agree on a set of terms which would be the same, exactly the same in all nomenclatures. You cannot prevent people from having their own way to describe and code, but at least you can convince them to use a set of terms which are absolutely necessary. And so we ended with 2,300 terms, which are now incorporated in all major nomenclatures. And we invite you, if you are in an institution having a personal nomenclature, to consider these terms, which are on the IRDiRC website, and you can download that. We have also decided to recommend some nomenclatures for use. The human phenomenology, which is the language which is understandable by computers and by humans to code signs and symptoms, and the other rare disease ontology to code the final diagnosis. So these two terminologies are recommended at world level. We have launched also a process which is called IRDiRC recommended, because we want people to save time and know quickly what to do good research in countries where they have a lack of, let's say, knowledge of how it is organized in other countries, much more developed in some areas. And so we promote some platforms, tools, guidelines, which are thought to be instrumental in speeding up research and improving quality of research. So this can also be found on the website, IRDiRC recommended. We have decided also to invest in some areas where there are problems currently still. The first one is to ensure that patient-centered outcome measures are developed for rare diseases. This is a field which is quite active for common diseases. It's much more difficult to develop that for rare diseases, so we want to convince all the stakeholders to pay attention to rare diseases. And so we have a workshop in November to discuss with the main actors in the field, and we hope that we will find an agreement. We want also to work on something which is close to the heart of our chairman, on small population clinical trials, because this is also a very difficult area, and we need to find agreements with the regulatory agencies on which type of statistical analysis is acceptable from a regulatory point of view. We have also selected some topics to improve diagnosis. The Matchmaker Exchange project, which is a project to facilitate the matching of unsolved genome and exome sequence cases based on similarities between the phenotypes and the genotypes. And so this is a very active working group, and we hope that this will end into a real service for the community. We also work actively on ensuring that the consent of patients can be stored in a way that can be understandable by computers. So in databases where patient data can be accessed from other countries or from other institutions, the researchers could know to what extent the patients are consenting, because it's of course very important to plan research. And we have also a very active working group on data mining and repurposing of drugs, because it's so important to develop drugs which will be less costly than the current ones. So all the documents that are accessible on our website, and thank you for your attention. I hope that you will convince your funding organization in your own country to join IRDiRC, because they are very welcome in principle.
Thanks very much. I think there's a huge amount of important things in there, from the science end to some really practical things. I'm a statistician, I analyse data in clinical trials and stuff like that. Actually being able to get hold of the data properly and clearly, and things about using similar dictionaries across different databases. It's one of those really boring things And if you don't do it, the whole thing collapses. So it really is important to drill down to those details. But thanks very much for those comments that you've given us. Let's move on now to the last speaker of the opening session, Paloma Tejada from Eurordis. Now, she brings an interesting perspective. Her background is in communications. Yeah, I'm a scientist. Sorry to offend anybody, but most scientists are lousy at communication. We love doing science, but we're not always good at communicating to other people. But unless we do, there is really very little in science. So it really is important. And she's going to talk about her work where she's been involved in launching of the RDI initiative.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paloma Tejada. I'm representing Eurordis today. Eurordis is the European Organization for Rare Diseases. I want to thank the organizers of this global week here in Mexico for having invited us. Thank you, FEMEXER, Geyser, and of course the ICORD Program Committee for having invited us at a time which is very important to us to talk about international collaboration. So this invitation has been very welcomed by Eurordis and is very timely, as you will see throughout my presentation. So I will be talking about RDI, Rare Disease International, more specifically, but I've been asked to talk more generally about global strategies for rare diseases, which is a huge topic. So I will try to be brief from the patient's perspective. Next, please. Just to give you a little bit of a background of Eurordis, in case you don't know Eurordis or you haven't followed the latest developments, it's an organization that has grown very fast, especially in these last 5 years. We are going to be almost 20 years old. We were founded in 1997. When I joined Eurordis 8 years ago, we had 250 members. Now we almost have 700 members. Our members are patient groups, not individuals. We are present, we have members, in 63 countries. So you can see that more than half of the countries that our members come from are from outside of Europe. So we're by the nature of what we do, we're actually going beyond Europe. We rely heavily on national alliances, which are the umbrella organizations that represent all rare diseases in a particular country. We work with 38 national alliances right now, and 51 European disease-specific federations. And we can say that our outreach goes to more than 1,800 patient groups worldwide. Our staff has also grown exponentially. When I joined, we were 10 people around a table. Now we have more than 30 people working at Eurordis full-time, mainly in our office in Paris, but we also have people working from Brussels doing advocacy at the European level. We have a secondment at the European Medicines Agency in London. We have a team, a very dedicated team working in Barcelona. And I moved to Geneva last year, and I've been working for Eurordis from Geneva, Switzerland since last year. Eurordis wouldn't be what it is without its volunteers. We also have many, many volunteers, patient advocates working with us, and more than 250 moderators of our online patient communities that I will tell you more about later in my presentation. And our budget is of 5 million euros. Now, this exponential growth that I was talking about, I think reflects the exponential growth there has been lately on the interest on rare diseases in this field, and the enormous mobilization of patient groups, not only in the north, but also in the south. Next, please. Oh, I forget. Okay, so just a quick reminder of who our board of directors is, because this is a small world, rare diseases. Most of us know each other, and you probably recognize some faces. We're lucky enough to have one of our board members here with us, Gema Chicano from Spain. And you can see Jan Lecam, who is our Chief Executive Officer. Many of you know him. He's a very good friend of ICORD. He's been coming to the ICORD conferences for a long time, and he is very sorry he couldn't make it this time. And that's our staff in Paris. So, why are we here today? Why are we interested in international collaboration? Well, it is obvious, as we have been saying over and over again throughout the week, that rare disease expertise is scarce and scattered. So